We're about halfway through the post-final shape episodic roadmap for Destiny 2, and I gotta be honest, I'm struggling. I think episode Revenant is a terrific summation of the state of Destiny right now, because it's showing Destiny at its best, and it's showing every crack that's been taped over for years and the current struggles that the game has. You know, I consider myself a pretty optimistic player. I don't dwell on the negatives, and if I'm not enjoying something, I don't hyper focus on it, I just tend to move on. I don't make Destiny my only game, but it is my big live service game. So, where am I at with this right now? Well, I only did Acts 1 and 2 of Episode 1, and still not gone back and finished it, and I am up to date on Episode 2. There's been so much talk about whether all the stories should be dropped at once, weekly for 3 weeks and then a break, or the old model of over 7 or 8 weeks. To be honest, I think this conversation only matters for a different reason. The fact is, I think this debate is only happening because right now, that's the only incentive to keep people around. And all this stems from my major concerns and problems for the game right now. I just don't care much for this loot. We're so power crept and that's only going to get worse. Like, Destiny is primarily a looter shooter, but when your loot stops mattering, it's really hard to be engaged. And there's just so much loot now that for a gun to be deemed worthwhile, it's got to become more powerful than the last bunch of loot and basically the new meta. But in a season like this where the loot is just, well, it's okay. It doesn't matter how fun Contest of Elders is or how much you enjoy Onslaught, if you aren't really feeling the reward of playing, you just don't really want to play that much. And this is where I've been for a while. I've just got so many good weapons now that a 1 to 2% benefit that I'm getting from the new stuff isn't really worth the time investment. I think Contest of Elders is brilliant, by the way, but there's like 3 guns out of 9, 10 that I want to obtain, and there's just no huge desire to get them, or I've already got them. Look, hands up, I think Bungie were right all those years ago with sunsetting. I just think it wasn't well handled looking back. And the truth is, yeah, with some of this loot, there is an incentive to get it because Bungie are doing a decent job in having seasonal weapons pair with the artifact, and it is making them a little bit more appealing. It's like adding some makeup to them, give them that little bit more of a temporary appeal. But going back to the story, I think the only reason there's so much debate about should it be 7 or 8 weeks, should it be all at once, is that because that loot is not that appealing and therefore the activities aren't begging to be replayed over and over and over, what is hooking people to stick around and come back for those weekly story beats would be the story. But that's all at once now. So there's that debate of should it be every week so that you do log in every week and therefore you are more engaged, or should it be all at once, you play hard for a week and then you come back 6 weeks later? For me, it is the latter option. I prefer all the story at once, play through it, do all the stuff, grind hard for a bit, and then bounce and come back later on. I think that's a healthier way to play the game personally than just constantly logging in for drip-fed story week by week by week. But that loot not being appealing is a problem. I'm just stunned that Destiny 3 was never in development. It was never in the equation. The problem Destiny has is that as a looter, all it can really do with the way it's established its lore and its world is change the loot and the power to a degree. There's a reason why most looters don't go on forever, because eventually you hit the boundaries of what you can do in that world, and I feel like that's what we've done with Destiny 2 getting prismatic, weapon crafting, and the enhanced perks that have came with all of that. Warframe can add a new Warframe. Borderlands has done new mainline titles or spin-offs. Diablo can add a new class, but even that's different because it has its seasonal loot and seasonal characters. Destiny doesn't have that option, it just has the 3 Guardian classes. It's why I'm often bamboozled when I hear like, why would I want a new Destiny if it gets rid of all the loot that I've chased and gathered over the years? But is that not the point? These games are the chase, the desire to earn, to get. Destiny, for me, has lost that. It's not the feeling of having it, it's the feeling of getting it, of chasing it. They're not inherently the same, but it's like a new Call of Duty every year. The Call of Duty fanbase relish that perk grind all over again, leveling up the guns, and don't get me wrong, I don't want an annual grind like that, but I do think that Destiny has lost that exciting chase, and now power crept guns that are giving you such small margins of improvement, they're not going to do it when we already have such an exciting arsenal of weapons. So when people say, oh, but Destiny 3 will be a reset unless we can carry over all of our stuff, I disagree. I think that reset is more exciting than just those marginal increase on the weapons. We've had the Destiny experience now. But obviously, with no Destiny 3 in the works, we're just going to have to wait and see what Bungie do with that loophole. On the flip side though, like I said, there is some really good stuff this season. First Stasis season we've ever had, and I think it is fantastic. It is so much fun. Lots of fun synergies, and I think season on season, Bungie are getting better with allowing flexibility and player choice in that build crafting. The ability to tackle champions in a variety of ways, giving precedence to grenade launchers one season, pulse rifles the next. It's a good way of making loot desirable or encouraging the player to experiment and change past a devour buried bloodline build or double specials, you know? I've loved picking up the Stasis class again, trying the new Rhyme Stealer perk on the hand cannon and getting this sick shatter build going. And I think now, in terms of build variety, especially with Prismatic that came with the final shape, it's the best it's ever been. And you pair that with modifiers which, Bungie still struggle with making fun and challenging. There's some alright ones, like the melee slowing you down or hitting harder, and there's some that are just like, no, like what are we doing? Not anything movement based where you're airborne. You can't penalise that kind of stuff. Going back to the build craft in a sec though, like I said, I think Bungie are doing such a good job in matching the episodic loot to the artifact. Stasis grenade launcher in a Stasis grenade launcher season. It helps make that season's loot more appealing when in fact the loot isn't getting that much better to be that much more desirable. It just helps it be a kind of one and done situation where you don't use it again, but that's okay because in that season you had a lot of fun. So there's two sides of it. As for the seasonal story or episodic story, whatever we want to call it, I just don't think it really matters. With the new saga comes a new delivery model in 2 big expansions a year, so I don't think this story delivery will remain the same. We have one more episode left after Act 3, probably the most exciting one with the Dreadnought, though I hope to God it is not another redemption story. Like, please Bungie, you've told some absolutely terrific stories in seasons, including ones with redemption, but a villain can stay a villain, alright? It doesn't always have to be redeemed. And I think the story dropping all at once did show how shallow these week-to-week story beats really are, but it's also about the delivery. I assume that these were written to be week to week. I think a story is strongest when it's told how it's meant to be told. So if you think that it's better to have a week to week story because you're writing it with the idea and the intent to have mystery to speculate on between the weeks, so therefore there's something to talk about, that's fine. But the stories being told right now aren't worthy of the wait from week to week. So I think actually all at once, from my point of view, is good. There's still some good stuff in there, by the way. Some great exchanges between Ido and Crow, especially at the end of Act 2. There were some brilliant performances there, and it resonated with me personally. But you can just tell where it's all going. Also, that cinematic was outstanding, man. Absolutely outstanding. The one that happened in Act 2. The cinematics for this game are just getting better and better. I just think, like, the idea of being Slayer Barons sounds sick, but I just never really feel it in the story. And I just can't help but feel the premise of these seasons is often cooler than what the execution of them is. The tonic aspect of the season was also an interesting one, but it also hasn't lived up to what was probably intended. On paper, it's a good idea to craft and brew tonics to help focus on particular loot or enhance a seasonal artifact perk, but in reality, it just gets forgotten about or just creates more friction for the player. Especially how much some of the tonics can enhance your build. I just think, why not add another perk to the artifact to grind, since that's really all this is doing, except just having to reapply or craft it again. I think the card system from Season of the Witch was the most realised version of what Bungie are trying to do here. But again, I appreciate the experimentation in trying to make something new. My feedback will just be to have a system that I can flick between permanently and only one can be active at once. The crafting of the tonics is fine, but make one tonic permanently so I'm not having to constantly reapply if there's just one tonic that I'm using. It's a sound system, it just needs a little bit less friction. It's also looking forward that concerns me though. It's a smaller team now that is working on Destiny, and therefore, as players, expectations do need to shift. But we've grown accustomed to a cadence of content since Witch Queen, really. We know they're moving away from that bigger one and done campaign to focus on more replayable activities, which is the right move, by the way. I love those campaigns, but I can't argue Bungie's point in that I never really replay them after the fact. But it comes back to what I said about the loot, in that it doesn't matter how good these activities are, if the desire to want to chase isn't there, I'm not sure if any of it can matter. I've had discussions with more deeply ingrained Destiny players, shall we say, about the need to cater towards the hardcore and add more complexity. And I agree. But if Destiny can't solve its onboarding problem, none of it will matter. Live service games are dependent on a cadence of new players coming in. And I have people ask me like, hey, should I get into Destiny? And I am like, absolutely. It's a surreal experience completing your first raid. Playing through all the story to finally defeat the Witness, having a dungeon exotic drop, creating this beautiful build that decimates. And then I remember the onboarding experience. Like, I created a Warlock this year. Throughout all my years playing Destiny, I've only ever been a Hunter. And with the changes they made this year, I decided to create a Warlock. And even me, with all my hours in this game, I was overwhelmed at how much shit is thrown at you from minute one. So, I'm concerned, man. I follow a lot of Bungie people and a lot of ex-Bungie people, and I see the passion. It's infectious, man. They care. There's been a lot of good moves recently too. Fire Team Finder, Fire Team Power, Character Power, the comms that we've been getting, free loot for the mistakes, promising upcoming changes for the expansion, and they are working on a lot of the problems that the game does have. It's also important to note, it's fucking impressive that this game has gone on for 7 years now, through a lot of highs and admittedly a lot of lows, but I really don't think there's anything like it. That's why people like me do keep coming back and enjoying it, because at its very core, it is so fun and feels so good to play. The real test, and I know we say it every year, but it feels like it all depends on the expansion, or expansions, I guess. The new scope of delivery, a new saga beginning, and a new era of Destiny. And I think the reception to that is going to be massive. Massive in terms of a jumping on point for new players to try and get them through the door. But also for existing players, are they going to be invested enough to want to stick around for another saga? There's a lot riding on it, there really is. I will say though, I think one key fundamental part of Destiny that it is missing right now is Destiny just doesn't have enough mystery around it, man. It's lacking so much in theories and teases and the kind of unknowns. It's just become so formulaic. It's like playing on autopilot. And I will say that's kind of what excites me about the idea of this new story, of a new expansion being non-linear and the desire to kind of bring back some of that mystery. So right now, I'm struggling with Destiny. I'm playing more casually than I ever have, and that's fine, by the way. I don't want my only video game to be Destiny, but when I do play it, I'm struggling. Even when my excitement was high, because the excitement of that chase is gone. The pondering of any mysteries is non-existent, and the game has just become so predictable. I just can't shake the feeling of perplexion of there being no Destiny 3. It feels so short-sighted at the top level. But this is their vision. This is what they're sticking with, and I really, really do hope that Bungie and Destiny can flourish once again. But that's where I'm at with Destiny. How are you feeling right now? Are you confident in the new saga? Are you not sure? Is there anything that they could do to kind of get you back in and make you feel the game again? Would you be down with Destiny sunsetting loot? Or are you like, no, I need all my loot, I've worked hard for this? I'd love to hear from you in the comments, but again, just keep it civil down there. If you enjoyed hearing my thoughts, I'd enjoy you leaving a like on the video, and yeah, this is how I cover games. Just be passionate, honest, and often optimistic about them. So, if you enjoy my take, I'd love for you to stick around, so maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. All my socials can be found down below. Otherwise, I hope you have a terrific day. Play games, get gains, and I'll catch you in the next one.